Now, before going any further, we need to answer a very simple question. What does it take for a spirit to be able to call itself bourbon?
Bourbon is the most heavily regulated product in the world. Our federal government tells you how you have to make bourbon.
I think the first thing to understand is all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. By definition, whiskey is a grain-based distillate. Once you understand that bourbon is a whiskey, then it's what defines a bourbon. So the rules of bourbon, I call it the ABCs. You start with A, American made.
Bourbon is uniquely American because you can only make it in America. You can distill 51% corn, age it in new charred oak barrels. You can jump through all those hoops, but if you do it in Mexico, you can't use the term bourbon.
It does not have to be made in Kentucky. A lot of folks believe that bourbon can only be made in Kentucky. Bourbon, by act of Congress, can be made anywhere in the United States.
B, barrels.
It must be aged in a brand new charred white oak barrel, just like what's behind me.
The lead character of a bourbon whiskey is the use of a new charred barrel. That gives bourbon that big, rich caramel vanilla note that just makes bourbon so special.
C is corn.
To be a bourbon, you have to use at least 51% corn, and there's a very good reason for that. Corn imparts a very unique flavor to bourbon, and that's sweetness. If you taste a Scotch whiskey, an Irish whiskey, you get some sweetness, a lot of it from the wood, maybe a little bit from the grains, but if you taste bourbon, you can taste that sweetness. You can almost taste the corn.
D is distillation proof. So when you come off the still, you cannot be higher than 160 proof.
The higher the proof, the less flavor that's going to be there. Think about it, vodka is 190 proof, 192 proof when it comes off those stills. It has no flavor, it's just pure alcohol.
You start getting over 160, you're stripping out grain flavor. You're moving more into a vodka category. That's not what we want with bourbon. We want to hold on to the grain character. So one of the rules is you got to be 160 or less coming off the still. E, entry proof. Going into the barrel, you have to be 125 proof or less. F, fill proof. In the bottle, your proof has to be 80 or above. G, genuine.
There are no additives allowed, so everything is what Mother Nature provides.
No flavor or no color or nothing can be added to bourbon. It's a natural product. If you add any color or any flavor, it becomes a whiskey. All that color must come from aging that new charred oak barrel.
You're only as good as what comes off the still and what comes out of that barrel and goes down that bottling line.